Yeah, Marcia, a couple clear takeaways. The first one is that they're ready for this. They have a plan. They had a plan before, and that plan is still the plan. They are going to respond. A couple key points, though. They're considering dollar-for-dollar tariffs. That's something that the Prime Minister said he supports and that they're going to take a look at. There will be support for Canadians and Canadian businesses if they do institute retaliatory tariffs, because obviously in the same way that American consumers would be the ones who pay ultimately for the tariffs that Donald Trump imposes, if we respond in kind, it'll be Canadian consumers who pay for that. They're the ones who are going to be paying more for marked up Canadian goods. Now, the government has said, like the last time around, they're going to look for products that have alternatives. Trudeau brought up the example of Heinz ketchup versus French's ketchup. At the time, French used Canadian ingredients, and so it wasn't tariffed or it wasn't taxed when Heinz's was. That's sort of the plan. They're going to look for products that have alternatives, but there will, be a number that don't. Kentucky bourbon, for example, is one of those. Florida orange juice, another, where there are very few alternatives, but it's something that they're planning to implement tariffs on that will have a significant impact on the state of Florida, state of Kentucky. Overall, we're looking at responding in kind. So that could be small, it could be large. It could be as high as $110 billion of U.S. goods that are impacted by these tariffs. That's what sources have told CTV News about the potential government response here. What I think is interesting, and certainly what a lot of the questions focused on this morning, is the unpredictability. Last night, we heard Dominic LeBlanc say nothing has changed. This is the same situation we were in a week ago, 48 hours ago. But things have changed. In the span of 9 hours, we saw the new U.S. president say tariffs are coming on day one, they're not coming on day one. Suddenly they're coming maybe 3 months later, according to the executive order, but then when he's talking in a presser later, it's coming next week. There is a massive level of unpredictability, and that's very difficult to deal with as a country that is facing massive economic impacts. You mentioned it, $1,900, the impact to Canadian families if these go through. And so the focus was really on that unpredictability, and Trudeau framed it as Trump trying to destabilize the people he's negotiating against. But there is still a challenge here. And when pressed repeatedly on whether that's frustrating, whether that's difficult to deal with, he really skirted the question. He didn't say that this was going to be something that was hard for them to deal with, just that they are prepared for every scenario. It just becomes much harder to prepare for such an extent of scenarios when you really don't know how the president's going to respond, even at any given hour.
Right. And that was the point that Premier Smith made just a few moments ago from Washington as well, that it is really difficult to make a deal with someone when you don't know what exactly it is they want. So as for the duration of this meeting today in Quebec, what is on the agenda, Colton?
Yeah, later this afternoon, the cabinet ministers are going to speak with an advisory panel, you would call it, of about 15 experts. Some of them were in the previous U.S.-Canada trade relations. For example, Flavio Volpe is a person we have on our feature on our broadcast quite frequently. He's an auto parts businessman and a strong advocate for Canada-U.S. trade. Obviously, his industry closely tied there. He's worked with the federal government the last time around when they were renegotiating the new NAFTA deal, USMCA or CUSMA. He worked with them on the tariff threats. He's working with them now on this current response. People like him are going to have a lot of influence and an opportunity to speak to this government about what are the best ways to respond. Lana Payne, another one of those names, a Unifor representative or a union representative, I should say, who's going to be able to bring a voice for workers, for example, to these discussions, because so much of the focus isn't just on how to respond to the U.S., but it's how to support Canadians and also how to ensure that the response that does come doesn't go too far, because that's also a risk that's really not being talked about yet. But in the background of all of this, if tariffs do come and we do respond, and then you're able to get those tariffs lifted, whatever the response happens or whatever the response is, it needs to be something that doesn't further deteriorate or damage the relationship when you once again become each other's top trading partners and those tariffs are gone.
Colton, thanks for all that. We'll stay in touch with you. Colton Praill joining us from Montebello, Quebec. So